Space is a place where your earth-honed intuition doesn't necessarily apply. The answers are not in the back of the book, and sometimes you don't even know what the question should be. Space is a frontier, and there are frontiers all around us. There are frontiers in the ocean, in the stratosphere, under the stage of a microscope. And people who go to these frontiers want to share the experience. They want to record data to get the knowledge that can come from the frontier. And photography is a great medium in which to do this. Now, I've had the good fortune to call this place my home 3 times, totaling about a year of living off of the planet. And I want to share some of my thoughts on taking pictures in this environment. And these pictures will encompass taking pictures inside of your spacecraft, and then taking pictures looking outside from your spacecraft. So let's start with looking at pictures inside your spacecraft. You're in this weightless environment. It's not zero gravity. We refer to it as zero gravity, but technically Earth's gravity is only about 13% less when you're in orbit than on the surface. But its effect to you locally has been canceled out. You're weightless, so you could sit on the ceiling, you could attach yourself to the wall. There's no relationship between up and down anymore. And so you get used to seeing a humble jumbo of crewmates sitting in all these different positions. And what happens, you will be looking into somebody's nose. And you're not used to seeing this as being creatures on Earth. And so you'll take pictures of all your crewmates, and they look perfectly normal to you. But when a picture like this gets down on Earth, you get instructed to take a picture like this. And astronauts are really, really good at making pictures in space that look like you've never left the planet. In fact, it's almost hard-pressed to tell whether you're in space or not in this picture. You know, we've got some fancy backdrops, I guess. So you need to ask yourself, do you want to record this environment like it really is, like you experience, or do you want to record the environment so that it's within the standards of people living on Earth? Here's another example. Lighting. Okay, now these are sleep stations. This is in what we call Node 2. It's like the Connecto Lego block where you can connect different modules together. And we have sleep stations around in a circle. And one of our crewmates sleeps in the top. You know, he comes down like a bat. I was coming up from the bottom, and I describe our sleep stations as being like a coffin-sized box. And I pop up out of the coffin, and then you have 2 of my crewmates that pop in from the sides. And you look at the lighting on this picture. The crewmate in the yellow shirt has this ghoulish look to him because the light's coming from the left. And that's the way it is when you are in an orbital environment. You have all these odd positions because you park yourself on the wall or the ceiling. Light is coming from various directions, and it's not unusual to get pictures like this. Now, when the NASA print shop got this picture, they did a lot of image processing to make my crew member in the yellow shirt look like he didn't have these ghoulish lightings on his face because they wanted it to look like it had been taken on Earth. And so you need to ask yourself the question, what would you do if you were in this environment? Would you take pictures like it really happens to be? Or would you take pictures that conform to Earth standards? And maybe the answer is somewhere in between. It possibly depends on the situation. This is my absolute favorite lens for taking pictures inside of a spacecraft. Inside of a spacecraft, it's cramped, it's cluttered. You have long passageways that are not well lit. And this lens, it's an 8mm fisheye lens, is my favorite for recording these situations. So this is in the US lab module. It's about 10 meters long, And this picture has a 180-degree field of view going from forward part of the module to the aft. And then we have what we call our 7th crew member. We've got 6 people living in space. And this is our android that we're working the bugs out of the technology right now. And we refer to him or possibly her, depending on how long you've been in space. And my last mission, I've been back here on Earth about 2 months from a 192-day space mission. And I think we referred to Robonaut, we started off referring to him as a him, and then somewhere along the mission we started referring to Robonaut as a her. Anyway, captures the moment. Now this is one of my crewmates, a Russian cosmonaut, very jolly fellow by the name of Oleg Kononenko. And this is inside the Russian Progress vehicle. This is an unmanned resupply vehicle that comes up, docks automatically, unless the automatics break down, then we have to manually dock it. And it's filled full of goodies. And the chamber that's filled full of goodies is about 2.5 meters in diameter. And then we unload all the goodies. Then we fill it full of our garbage, which is mostly buckets about this big filled with poop. And then you got to do something with that stuff, right? It just doesn't, you just don't flush it. And so we fill it, we put it in the spacecraft, and then we'll undock it, and it burns up in the atmosphere. So at least it's a sanitary way of getting rid of this stuff. This poses an interesting environment to take a picture because it's cramped, and it's all shiny aluminum. Now, if you want to go for a jaunt outside, and we all like to go for a jaunt outside, you better be wearing a set of clothes that look like this. And what I try to do with that fisheye lens is to take circular structures that are everywhere on space station, try to match that with the warping of the fisheye lens, and try to get pictures, try to get images that to first order don't look like they were taken with a fisheye. Now, let's move to taking some pictures outside. And this is a view of my view, taken from the Russian airlock, the Shluzovoy Otsek. And it has one little window that looks forward to where our cupola is. And the cupola is this amazing collection of windows. We have 7 windows looking nadir at Earth. You could see 360 degrees around. You could look at the limb of Earth. And we fill it with cameras. We'll have 6, 7, 8 cameras, all set up a little differently, all set up with different lenses. Earth goes by really fast. You go 24,000 miles in 90 minutes. And if there's something you want to take a picture of, maybe your hometown or whatever, you have 3 to 5 seconds to get that shot off, or you'll have to wait another 11 days till you're over your hometown again. And so we'll have all these cameras set up. There's no time to change lenses. There's no time to change settings. If you want to capture images of a sunset, and just as an example, sunset here on Earth, half a degree width of the lunar disk or the solar disk takes 2 minutes to set. In space, it takes 7 seconds. So you don't want to even take the time to turn your camera on. We keep our cameras on all the time. We never turn them off. Views out the window. You have this amazing perspective of Earth. You could see Earth on the length scale of half a continent. It's definitely a wide-angle view. If you're over Central Australia, you could see the East Coast and the West Coast at the same time. And the truly unique thing, through my eyes in space, is to capture the wide-angle nature of what your views are. This is near the Kamchatka Peninsula, and that big dark blob is the shadow cast by a moon, our moon, during the annular total solar eclipse. And this is the Aleutian Island chain. And in the clouds, you see a von Karman vortex streak. This is something that uber geeks all are aware of because we've worked in wave chambers in our laboratory, and we generate these von Karman vortex streaks as a means of studying turbulence. And you look out in nature, and you can see these things right there. But this is a wide-angle view. We have all kinds of telephoto lenses. We use these a lot. However, if you're not careful, you can end up with a picture that's maybe not quite as good as what you could pull down from Google Earth. And in my view, you got the human eye, you want to capture something that's different than what a satellite could capture. I was able to talk NASA into taking a perfectly fine D3S body and pulling the IR blocking filter out. And the reason for this was we stopped flying film during my first flight, which was in 2002. And this is because we were on station when Columbia came up, and we lost our ride back to Earth, and our mission was extended a little bit. And thereafter, we quit flying film. And with that, we lost the ability to do color infrared photography, because that was all film-based. So now we can do infrared photography digitally with this modified Nikon D3S camera. And this happens to be the Ganges River Delta, and the deep red are the mangrove wilderness. And you can see on the left-hand side, you can see where agriculture is starting to infringe into the wilderness areas. These are typical of infrared pictures, near infrared. This is in Guatemala, an oblique view of some volcanoes surrounded by jungle. And these are examples of the scientific data set that I found interesting just from an artistic point of view. This in the Bahamas, it turns out coral reefs and turquoise water and sediments give these amazing colors in the near infrared. Now, reflections. The windows on space station typically are 4 panes, which offer a pane in themselves because there's 8 surfaces now to offer reflections. And we've put anti-reflection coatings on these windows, but they still reflect a fair amount of light. And so you have to work hard to get rid of these reflections, particularly if you're taking images at nighttime, orbital nighttime. And so this is, I call it my turtleneck. It's kind of a turtleneck-like thing that I could spread out at the base of the cupola to keep unwanted stray light coming in from node 3, which is where the cupola is attached. There's a lot of instrument panels with little red lights and little green lights that you can't turn off, and they could spoil your picture. Now, sometimes you want to use the reflections. If you can't get rid of the reflections, let's learn to live with them. And so I call this 7 faces. Aurora. Aurora is one of the most beautiful things you could see at nighttime. You could see it on the length scale, half a continent. It's tough to take pictures of because you are moving and it is moving, and the dynamic range of the aurora exceeds what the camera can record. And so if you want to record the red, which is very weak, maybe 3 stops weaker than the green, then the greens will all be saturated. If you want to record the green, then you don't see the red, and in any case, the cities on Earth will be blurry. So I started doing high dynamic range bracketing in conjunction with intervalometer. So each picture now can be 5 stacked bracketed images, so you can get this high dynamic range image, and then you do that as fast as you can so you can put these together into a time-lapse movie. And taking these intervalometer images with the D3S or the D2X or the Kodak Nikon 760, if you go back to 2000, this is the only way that we could record what it remotely looks like at nighttime in space, because the digital video cameras just simply can't record the wonders of what you see in the aurora. And by taking these intervalometer images, maybe framed at 1 a second, maybe framed at 2 a second, you can reconstruct something close to what you see with your eye. shadows. Shadows in space are really stark. And you're either full-blown sunlight or pitch black, and there's almost no in-between. If you go out for a stroll outside, it's the same way. You try to take pictures. We'll bring our cameras outside with us. You try to take pictures, and you have these shadows that you have to deal with. Sometimes you can use the shadows to your advantage. I sent this picture home to my boys, and I said, "We found Godzilla in space." Visiting vehicles. Another thing that you'll want to get pictures of, we have these unmanned vehicles that come up that are loaded with supplies. And they'll either dock automatically or we have to intervene if the automatics don't work quite correctly. And this happens to be an ATV. It's a ESA European vehicle that comes up and docks on the back of the Russian segment. And these are fire-breathing creatures. They will belch fire in a display of who can belch the most spectacular display. And of course, you'll want to try to record some of these images. Oh, this is one of my favorite. These are star streak pictures, star trail pictures. And the nighttime does not really look like this with your eyes, but it has all of these elements in it. These are multiple 30-second exposures stacked to show the orbital motion as well as the star trail motion. These are images that have a lot of natural phenomenology visible. For example, look at the little flashes. That's one lightning storm as a function of time. And it flashes off. It's like someone moving around in a dark room with a strobe. They'll flash, move over 2 or 3 feet, and flash again. It's the same thing with one thunderstorm moving as a function of time. The star trails go around in circles. If you're used to seeing these, when you put a camera on Earth on a tripod, that's Polaris, the North Star. Earth is rotating around that. This happens to be the pitch axis of your spacecraft is what makes those circles. So they're similar to, but a little different than what you do on Earth. Here's another example. Just the physics involved in one of these pictures, the phenomenology. I could talk easily for a half hour just on one picture. They're fun pictures. Again, they're primarily for data. Oh, cities at night. You look at how human beings sprinkle their light bulbs out at night. It's amazing from an orbital perspective. And nobody on Earth designs their cities by how they look in space. They just happen to turn out that way. This is a typical astronaut picture. This is the best we used to be able to do. This is circa 2002 with the cameras we had at that time. They're always soft focus because of orbital motion. And being unhappy about that, I cobbled this piece of equipment up from spare parts that were on station. The big black thing is our IMAX movie camera mount. And it wasn't being used because we no longer had film on station anymore. So it was just stored in a closet. So I figured nobody'd mind if I used it. And then I got out our drill driver. And then I needed a long bolt. And I found one in the Progress vehicle. I figured that burns up in the atmosphere. Nobody will miss just one bolt. and then, so you drive that bolt, and it pushes against the platform, and you can move one axis of gimbal in a real controlled manner depending on how much you squeeze the trigger. And then I took one of our cameras that happened to be a Hasselblad camera with a 70 millimeter back, but we didn't have 70 millimeter film anymore because we didn't have film. And I put the 350 millimeter lens on it, and it became a fancy spotting telescope. And you look through that camera, you squeeze the trigger on the drill driver until the images of cities at night are stationary, and then you take a picture with the other camera that you have mounted on the mount. And if you're an amateur astronomer, you'll realize that this is nothing more than a barn door tracker. And amateur astronomers make barn door trackers to take pictures of space and counteract Earth motion. And I was in space counteracting orbital motion so I could take a picture of Earth. So again, this is the classic picture of what we were able to do with our cameras available then. And here's what we're able to do. This is Montreal, by the way, with this barn door tracker. So now we could get pictures of cities at night, close to what they look like with your eye. And we could get about 60-meter resolution with these. And so we took thousands of pictures all over Earth, wherever our trajectory happened to take us. And here's an example. It's a mosaic, starting off with some obscure place down here. I can't quite recognize that. Going up to Boston. And you can zoom into these mosaics, sort of like Google Earth. You can keep going down and down and down until you get to the native resolution, which again is about 50 meters. Now, times have changed. We have better cameras now, and the European Space Agency built a real mount tracking system that's computer controlled. So now we can get better pictures. And this is New Orleans. And this is taken with D3S on the mission I just got back from. And we can get down to 10-meter resolution with our systems now, sometimes maybe even a little better. And you can see the Mississippi River there. You can see the French Quarter is a hopping place at this time of night. Now, this is Sao Paulo, Brazil. We've taken pictures all over Earth, and it turns out there's a triangle between culture, technology, and geography that dictates how we spread our lights around. And the blue area, or the blue-green area, that's mercury vapor lighting. And you can see the sodium vapor lighting from the burrows that are growing around it, and then you can see the coastline. So our cities at night, embedded in this database, is something about who we are as a species and how we spread our lights around. And cities at night may actually be one of the most beautiful unintentional consequences of human activity. It's also a form of light pollution. So this brings me back to the beginning. Space is a frontier. Photography is a wonderful medium to record scientific data, record the knowledge that you could discover there. It's also a good medium in which to record the experience. Thank you.
You know, when you think about the fact that there are only 6 people in space right now, and you think of that, the fraternity and sorority of astronauts who have gone up, it's kind of remarkable to me, and I've had a shit-eating grin on my face ever since Don said he would be coming to the conference. And then last night we had a speaker's dinner, and a lot of us had a chance to sit down and talk with him, and it's just like really inspirational for whatever reason. So I have a lot of questions, is what I'm trying to say. The first is, are you assigned to be the photographer on the station, or is that something that you're like, oh, I'm an astronaut by day and I take photos by night?
It's more of a hobby thing. There are some astronauts that fly that if the camera isn't set for P, they'd never be able to take a picture. Then there are folks like me who spend every spare time taking pictures. So it's a personal thing. People who enjoy taking pictures before they become an astronaut are typically the ones that continue to grow and learn how to use the photo equipment and are the ones that take most of the pictures during an orbit phase.
And is there a book like Shooting from Space for Dummies or a Kelby seminar that you watch before you go up?
We have a photo TV department, and we get pretty good training from professional photographers on how to use the equipment, and they badger us by showing all of these hundreds of awful pictures that previous astronauts have taken and say, don't take a picture like that. For example, all the up-the-nose shots where you can almost see how many hairs are up there, and realize that if you're taking a picture like that, they're looking at you thinking the same thing too. But that's the way it is in space. When somebody's sitting on the ceiling and you're sitting on the floor and you're looking at each other, that's just what the geometry says. And we have plenty of examples of how not to take pictures from our trainers.
We talked about this briefly last night, but on Vimeo, a number of people have taken your images and created these amazing time-lapse movies out of that. Have you seen any of those, and if so, what was sort of your reaction to them?
I've seen a number of these time-lapse movies, and it does me good to see that people are actually using the pictures that I take. I think that whatever art form you enjoy creating, the best compliment is to see somebody take it and enjoy it themselves. And so seeing these movies that people have put together. And at NASA, I cannot use copyrighted music unless you can arrange with the musician to use their copyrighted music, right? Because we're part of the government, we can't do that. But people on YouTube can do that. And so they can make these marvelous film clips using my images that I can't do. And some of these are so beautiful, it brings a little tear to my eye, and it makes me wish that I could fly into space.
Are you downloading your cards up on the space station and photoshopping them up there, or are you transmitting RAWs back to Earth?
Mostly we downlink them. During my mission, we had 6 hard drives fail.
Oh my Lord.
And hard drives, for some reason, have this habit of failing when they get into weightlessness. They don't last like they do down here. Nobody understands why, but they just do. And so the quicker you can get your images off of a hard drive and downlinked, and NASA does an incredibly good job of stewarding all the raw files. And we shoot all raw files, raw NEFs, and they're stored as NEFs. And so it's to your advantage to get them down as quick as you can, because you never know when you're going to have a hard drive failure. But having said that, I'll high grade some of my favorite, and I do have a copy of Photoshop, or I did, and I'll stir some of them around in my spare time just because I can. However, I'd rather spend my time taking the pictures when I'm in orbit than doing the image processing, because there's plenty of time to do the image processing when you're back on the ground.
Last question. Last week I saw a friend of yours up in the ISS, Aki, who took a pretty cool self-portrait while he was outside fixing the space station with a toothbrush. I'm wondering if there's a little competition between astronauts to get the most iconic self-portrait in space.
I don't know whether there's a competition. Everybody, we all have enough vanity that we like to do some self-portraits, and you probably noticed a few in my presentation here. I like to have a fisheye lens with something that's shiny and get my reflection in it.
It's like Don Pettit updated his Facebook cover photo. Damn it! Again!
Everybody wants to get a self-portrait when you go out for a little jaunt. But one of my favorite self-portraits, I didn't put it in here, I was fixing this valve. And it's a big ball valve that has this spherical globe in it, about the size of your fist, in this big piece of mechanism. And it was for our carbon dioxide scrubbing machine, which broke. And so the CO2 levels starting to build up. And you want to get this machine fixed. So you take it apart, and there's this broken valve, and you got dozens of little pieces. And there's a big ball valve, and it's nice, polished, shiny. It's in this piece of equipment. And I used that as an opportunity to make a self-portrait in this valve with my reflection in the valve. And maybe I'll put that one on my Facebook.
That sounds good. Dr. Don Pettit. Thank you so much. Thank you.